Arabic is the official language of more than 27 countries, and there are more than 400 million speakers of the language worldwide. Yet in the US, for example, less than 1% of students study Arabic. Studies have shown that those who speak a second language not only earn more, but are in higher level positions than their monolingual counterparts. And there's no shortage of studies that point to the benefits of students at the K-12 level learning a new language. The National Research Council in 2007 found that children who study a foreign language show greater cognitive development in areas such as mental flexibility, creativity, and higher order thinking skills. Qatar Foundation International inspires meaningful connections to the Arab world by creating a global community of diverse learners and educators, connecting them through effective and collaborative learning environments inside and outside the classroom. Qatar Foundation International builds bridges across cultures by increasing the number of K-12 students in the Americas and the United Kingdom with a good knowledge and understanding of Arabic language and culture by increasing the number and quality of Arabic programs in state and public charter schools in the United States and other countries. Qatar Foundation International supports the teaching of the Arabic language through grant-giving and programming activities while increasing and professionalising the supply of highly qualified teachers of Arabic, thus raising the visibility of a growing profession through grants, professional development and free online resources. For more information on free teaching materials and available grants, please go to qfi.org and ispeakarabic.com. And now, a quick message from our friends at Class Central. It's been more than half a decade since free online courses from Stanford kicked off the modern MOOC or Massive Online Open Courses movement. Since then, more than 700 universities around the world have launched MOOCs, and more than 60 million people have taken at least one course. Class Central has been keeping track of the MOOC space right from the beginning. Over 10 million learners have used Class Central to find and review online courses. As the number one search engine for online courses, Class Central provides a comprehensive listing of more than 8,000 MOOCs. Class Central's MOOC Report blog contains the most comprehensive coverage of the industry, including a recent listing of the top 50 MOOCs of all time. To find out what's up, down, new, or just slightly left field in the world of online courses, head to www.class-central.com/report. Hello everyone, and welcome to this fourth part of the ASU GSV Summit Series of 10 episodes on the Edtech Podcast. My name is Sophie Bailey and you are very welcome. This week we're getting into the fascinating world of China and EdTech. According to a 2016 OECD report, China's investment in education has increased at a rate of 19% on average in the last 10 years. Chinese education law requires increased government appropriations for education at all levels proportional to the growth of the national economy. As such, China's educational expenditure per student as well as teacher salaries should see continued growth. And I can hear a collected sigh of "that's not fair" from our UK and US educators listening in and wishing that was the case everywhere else. Currently, the Ministry of Education has set 4 areas of priority. 1. Rural, remote, poor and minority areas. 2. Primary education in rural areas, vocational education and preschool education. 3. Subsidies for students from poor families. And 4. Building a high-quality team of teachers. The introduction of a new curriculum since 2001 has also diversified the learning on offer, with more programs aimed at improving students' creativity and research capabilities, as well as helping students develop a sense of social responsibility through practical experiences, including technology. And whilst in 2016, both China and the US have seen a dip in funding for edtech startups, Chinese edtech startups still raised $1.54 billion in 2016, outweighing the volume of edtech deals confirmed in the US. Budget in ICT and edtech is also increasing, reaching over $40 billion, and online learning is now used by more than 100 million Chinese learners, with an annual growth rate of 13%. We will hear from many of these startups today, including newest edtech unicorn on the block, Cindy Mai, CEO of VIP Kid, plus Yi Wang, CEO of Lulu Xiao, Dun Zhao, co-founder of Homework Together, Joy Chen, Executive Advisor for the International Business Development part of the Tao Education Group, and also Pai Yu, Head of the EdStars program at Tao Education, and finally Sophie Chen, Partner with JMD EDU. We'll be covering everything from language learning, EdTech accelerators, international and domestic education systems, importing and exporting EdTech, and getting to grips with the Chinese educational landscape. If you're interested in all that, check out the reports section of the Edtech Podcast website, where there are some great public reports on China and EdTech. And what's more, you should also check out additional China and EdTech content from the ASU GSV Summit team, including videos on this topic in our show notes, weekly email, or via the ASU GSV Summit website, asugsvsummit.com, where the whole series is listed. This week's extras include contributions from Education Week, Arizona State University, Coursera, and many of our podcast guests. But first, before we kick off with this week's episode, here's Michael Moe with the GSV CAP perspective on China and EdTech to set us up for this week's episode.
So, over the last several years at our ASU GSV Summit, China has been a key feature because it has become so important. And we've had a number of people participate in the event, from Cindy Me from VIP Kids, Tom Zhang from Tao Education, Rick Levin, who was the former president of Yale University, but obviously Yale has had a 20-year plus history in China. Andrew Ng, who's the founder of Coursera, and so forth. Chris Whittle with his new Whittle Schools. A lot of their focus is Asia and specifically China. So I do think this has been an area that's been important for a while. And I think what we're saying with both this event and this podcast is it's only going to become more important and critical to be part of, to really participate in where the greatest opportunities are going to be created. China is really the center of the enormous economic activity and growth of Asia overall. It's what we call a megatrend of V-chips, which is you look at the leaders of the global economy as we look ahead, it's these V-chips, Vietnam, China, Indonesia, India, the Philippines, which really are going to be the economic engine of growth. Demographics play to the V-chips, unlike America and Europe, which was the economic engine of the last 100 years. You have a young population, you have a huge emphasis on education, and you have these mega trends that play to China specifically, a hugely mobile population. You have a huge emphasis on education and knowledge economy. And third, urbanization. Just to put a little context around that urbanization piece, in China, there's 160 cities with 1 million or more in population, contrasted to the United States, which has just 10. Yeah, so when you look at the official population of Shanghai, it's 24 million people. But according to demographers, when you actually look at the cell phone traffic and other factors, the real population is closer to 40 million. That's larger than the entire country of Canada. Xi'an, which is the 10th largest city in China, has 13 million people. It's larger than Sweden, and you've never heard of it before. In terms of how people spend their money, in the United States, 33% is spent on housing, just 10% is spent in Asia on housing. Yet when you look at education, in the United States, it's 2%, Asia, it's 15%. So you just have this enormous wave and emphasis on learning and tremendous opportunity that's taking place in China specifically. In 2016 alone, there was $230 billion raised by Chinese venture capital funds. When you look at capital deployed, Shanghai and Beijing together had as much as Silicon Valley. So you're seeing tremendous amount of venture activity in the Chinese market. When you look at the overall capital markets, the 5 largest market cap companies in the world are technology companies. It's Apple, it's Google, it's Amazon, it's Facebook, and it's Microsoft. But when you look at the 7th and the 8th largest market cap companies in the world, it's Alibaba and Tencent. And not only these based in China, which is interesting, but these companies didn't exist 20 years ago. So you're seeing this enormous amount of growth and financial and enterprise value that's being created because of the growth, because of the forward opportunity. Well, recently, I think there was a huge exclamation point put on education technology overall, but certainly the Chinese market, when VIP Kids raised $200 million, led by Sequoia and Tencent, and Cindy Mi, the founder of VIP Kids, became the first female unicorn CEO in the education technology space. You also have Li Shi Wu raised $100 million in July from China Media Capital, Wu Capital, IDG, and GGV. This is an English learning mobile app that helps users learn to speak English. The founder is from China, went to Princeton, worked at Google. Again, very exciting, technology and growth opportunity. And one of the things I'd like to do is just do a commercial for an invitational event that we're hosting in partnership with TAL in Beijing at the end of November. We're really focused on what the challenges and opportunities in the Chinese market, and really it's a global education technology event, and we have some very significant keynotes that we'll be announcing soon. But some of the key issues include the Great Firewall of China, which blocks American companies' websites such as Google and Facebook, and that's an important issue to understand. The mobile technology infrastructure is built on existing platforms such as WeChat. I mean, if you want to do business and communicate with Chinese people, you better be on WeChat and understand how all that works. The local knowledge of existing Chinese market really trumps what Westerners understand about China. You see what Didi did versus Uber, ultimately kind of forcing Uber's surrender in the Chinese market. And, the censorship of third-party applications is a big issue to understand. So those, I think, are the kind of key issues I mentioned. The summit that we're having in Beijing at the end of November, we think is going to be an outstanding time for entrepreneurs, investors, industry people to really get deep connectivity and knowledge of how to navigate, in this enormous opportunity of China.
Thanks, Michael. A big shout out to the ASU GSV Summit, Class Central and the Qatar Foundation International for sponsoring this week's episode. And congratulations this week to Haz Yate from the e-learning unit at Queen Mary University of London for winning our competition and the free ticket to get in Beijing. Okay, here we go. Episode 83, and let us know what you think via Twitter at Podcast Edtech and at ASU GSV Summit. So I'm delighted to be speaking with Joy Chen, who's Executive Advisor and of International Business Development with the TAL Education Group. So welcome, Joy.
Hi, Sophie. Thanks for having me.
And we're speaking to you today from Palo Alto in the Silicon Valley. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. That's where I am based now.
Okay, fantastic. So for those people listening who haven't heard of TAL Education Group, could you describe the business briefly and what your mission is in education as well?
Yes, actually, TAL is the initial name for Tomorrow Advancing Life, and we are a leading education and technology company in China. We are the public company in New York Stock Exchange market. Our ticker is TAL, and we're committed to improve learning by integrating technology and the internet into education. And by now, TAL has over 500 learning centers in over 30 cities in China. And we have a total student enrollment of 3.9 million as of fiscal year 2017. And we also promote education through our investments in ventures such as Minerva Schools, Newton, and Body.
Okay, so you invest in other EdTech ventures as well?
Yes, that's right. And that's also one of my initiatives, which is helping this company to do overseas business development, investment, and merger acquisition.
So that's what I was going to ask. So you explained the kind of reach of TAO in China. What's kind of on the horizon for TAO internationally in terms of setting up some of those study initiatives internationally? Whereabouts are you looking, and what's the scale of your ambition as well?
Okay, great question. So we are looking into a couple of things. The first of all is I'm here to help the company to establish the great partnership, business relationship with the large education companies overseas, and also trying to work with universities. We have done the partnership with MIT. We worked with their media lab. We are going to work on the Scratch programming language. We try to co-design, develop the Scratch curriculum for the kids in China so they can have a better education to know how to use Scratch. So another area is the investment side. So nowadays we are doing lots of investment in different areas. The couple of focused growth sectors we are focusing on now. One is the early education and also the STEAM-related programming side, and also K-12 learning, which is still the largest growing sector for our own business as well, and also international education.
That's interesting because I feel that generally speaking, early years sometimes feels a bit left out. So there's lots of focus on K-12, higher education, certainly on STEAM. So where are you seeing the unique opportunities in early years?
So now China government allows 2 children per family. This means huge opportunities in early education market. So that's why we are focusing on the early education sector's investment. We're expecting to have like 20 million newborns each year starting from this year 2017. So we actually are going to have a baby booming age in China. So with that kind of many newborn babies, they are going to need lots of attention and great programs, product services to help them to grow, to learn at their early age.
When you talk about bringing the internet into education, what does that mean for you?
Okay, great question. So we are now paying more and more attention into how to leverage the internet and technology to empower the education. So we are looking to the massive open online courses, and also we're looking to the education technologies which has artificial intelligence behind it, so that we can really making sure kids can have their personalized learning according to their own personal learning needs, learning styles, and the learning pace.
So we'll move on now. So this week's episode is on China and EdTech. So China is the hot ticket in EdTech right now, or so it seems. So why do you think that is?
Great question. I think education technology itself is a growing and evolving industry globally. And you're right, China is a hot ticket in this industry now. I can think about a couple of reasons. Number one is from the funding perspective. I've seen lots of capitals and money getting into this industry from institutional investors, personal investors, and the government. And especially Chinese government is paying lots of attention into EdTech. It has invested a record of $1 billion in EdTech startups in year 2015. And ever since, the investment in that area has been on the rise. And the government has also announced that it would invest $30 billion in venture capital in startups by year 2020. So I think that's one of the reasons. And another reason is the talents. Aside from the funding, China is also attracting its tech-savvy brains overseas back home, providing them with local training, better compensation. I believe those are the people who will give education technology a big boost in China. And another thing I can think about is the consumers' needs. As you know, China is a country with large population, and also we are a country that combines attributes from and shares challenges with education system in both highly developed and less developed countries, somewhere with a significant urban population as well as large population in rural areas. So I can see education technology can provide better solution to cover those 2 different populations.
Yes, and you've got the backdrop of sort of increased spending in edtech in China versus a sort of budget restraint, certainly in the UK edtech market anyway, around education generally, and then a sort of lack of government opinion on edtech. So that's created a bit of a vacuum, I think, in terms of activity somewhat. So a few more questions. What are the education problems and opportunities in China which need solving?
A great question. To me, problems and the opportunities always go hand in hand. One of the biggest challenges in China is the huge population. We have a population about 1.4 billion as of now. And I think because of that, in the school, you see large classrooms usually have over 40 or even 50 students. However, large populations also brings huge education needs. Parents, students have tons of education needs. It gives education companies opportunities to help them with their services and products. And another big challenge now we are facing is the unequal access to education resources. I'm talking about tier 1 cities versus the rest, developed East versus less developed West. So that's another thing. And another one big challenge is our uniformed public education system, which probably you guys have heard about, that focus a lot on the exam preparation. However, this also gives chances to education companies, provides education content, products, services, because we can't convince students to drop out of school to pursue a completely different and uncertain route, but we can provide different learning values to improve students' overall learning experience. Those can be the added values to the traditional Chinese educational system. Those programs can be STEAM education, project-based learning, those very interesting and attractive to those students who are inside the public school system.
That's very interesting. And on your travels internationally and speaking to the different companies that you do, what particularly inspires you in this space currently?
Oh, the technology itself, especially how we leveraging technology and internet to have those kind of so different, attractive, interesting learning programs developed, designed for kids at different age, at different learning paces. And another thing is we can have a coverage of tons of students. It's not like the traditional kind of offline training centers. Now, bringing those learning programs, learning content online, lots of people, lots of students can access to it no matter where they are, no matter they are accessing at what kind of different time zone.
And finally, final question, what are the resources, people, or book recommendations that have had an impact on you or your thinking that you'd like to share with the community listening in as well?
Okay, so resources can be, I'm now lucky, my previous company has been acquired by TAL, and now I'm working for TAL. And because of working for TAL, it provides me a great platform, and I'm exposed to many interesting things in the education area. I can see myself doing things to benefit more families and kids. So that's one. And another one is because of what I'm doing, I get access to different conferences and meeting interesting people. And although I consider myself a newcomer in Silicon Valley, but I'm lucky enough to get opportunities to work with and partner with the world leading VC firms and the influential investors in the edtech area. So lots of learning there, which is very inspiring and also very educational itself. And the book I can think about, the first book is Tuesday with Morris. I'm not so sure if you've heard about that book. It's a book talking about someone who's old but patient-wise. Before he passed away, he spent every Tuesday with one of his students talking lots about greatest life lessons. So it's kind of great book, help you to see the world differently and also get some sound advice to help us make our way through.
Sounds philosophical as well.
Yeah.
But you were also mentioning the event that you have been working on busily over the summer.
Yep. So what we're doing is we are partnering with GSV. We met at ASU GSV the springtime. And by the end of November, this coming November, we are going to have another similar conference happening in China, in Beijing, which is called the GES, Global Education Summit, where planning to bring together 500 of the industry's top CEOs, entrepreneurs, investors, educators, and policymakers from China and across the globe.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Joy, for your time today.
Thank you so much.
So I'm really delighted to connect with Dun Xiao, who's the co-founder of Homework Together, or
一起作业. Yeah.
Excellent. So welcome, Dun, to the Edtech Podcast.
Thank you, Sophie. It's an honor.
Could you give us an overview for those listening about what Homework Together is, and, just to give us a sense of what you're doing here at ASU GSV Summit as well?
Of course. So we are the largest online learning platform for K-12 in China. So we connect the three core users in K-12: teachers, students, and parents. Our main product is homework, as the name implies. We get teachers to assign homework on our platform. The students come and do and submit the homework. And then we give feedbacks to students, teachers, and parents. At the moment, we are in over 100,000 schools with over 40 million users. And every day, over 100 million problems are solved on our platform. And we're really excited because there are over 200 million students and over 400 million parents in China. And I think this concept can be expanded globally as well. That's why I'm in ASU GSV. As I understand, it's one of the best EdTech conferences in the world. And we really enjoyed talking to our counterpart in other parts of the world. I found similar business models, ideas that are different but very inspiring. So when I actually started doing EdTech, there was no word for it. There was no EdTech, there was no internet education.
What year was that?
That was actually back in 2008. I was based in London at the time, and I did apps for publishers, including Cambridge University Press, Oxford University Press, Pearson, McGraw-Hill, Macmillan.
That's
Kaplan.
Fascinating. So the development for those publishers, was that your own company?
Yes, it was my startup.
And what was that called?
It's called D&H. D was me, and H was my partner.
That's awesome. And, Simplicity, I love that.
And we actually launched one of the first educational apps. It was a Cambridge Dictionary on the App Store in 2008.
Interesting.
And we did English grammar in use for Cambridge. And,
so are you quite tied in with the kind of London edtech scene, what is called now?
Maybe not too much anymore. I mean, I met with Namish from Show My Homework.
So that was my next question, was to say, our kind of sort of most prominent edtech success story would be Namish and Show My Homework. And I guess you have like a similar business model. But obviously in China, there's a far greater scope in terms of learners, parents, schools. Yeah,
absolutely. As I was saying, I think, it's a global challenge that we are facing. We need to educate our students to be able to face the future's challenges. And it's common across all geographical regions. And I think, one way is definitely through technology. And I think people, EdTech entrepreneurs all over the world see the same challenge. And in our view, it is the same opportunity. So, like Namish in the UK, like, lots of companies in the US. I met with a company in India, a company in Saudi Arabia, that does similar things as well. And I think we can learn from each other and maybe, as our name implies, complete this homework together.
Yeah. I love that. Very collaborative. And why I mentioned just as we set up that I really loved reading your bio because there's such a myriad of experiences in there. So I just wondered if you could share the best bit with our listeners, and what caught my eye was how you were involved with the Olympics as well.
Yeah. So I have always been passionate about sports. I actually went to Millfield School in the UK, which is known for sports.
Yeah.
And I always wanted to do some service to my hometown as well. I was born in Beijing, and I think Olympic Games in Beijing was like the perfect combination. I was working in UBS London at the time, and I realized that this is something that I just couldn't miss. My boss was kind enough to give me like a 6-month suspension of my employment.
That's amazing.
So I basically did a sabbatical in the Olympic Games. And I think it actually changed my worldview, because before there were like words, like for example, CTS, Altius, Fortius, which is a Olympic spirit, meaning faster, higher, stronger.
Yeah. Sounds like a Daft Punk song.
Yeah, exactly. That was kind of empty for me before. But when I was actually, I kind of had a sense of it when I was doing sports and watching sports. But actually being involved in the center of the biggest sports event in the world, I actually believed in that. I saw the value firsthand from athletes, from audience, just the spirit. And the Chinese Olympic game had this spirit of one world, one dream. And I think it very much inspired me to set up my next 2 startups. Because I think, we all have the same dream for our future. We want our children to grow up healthily, happily, and we want them to learn well. And we want them to, be peaceful with each other and understand each other, see the world, communicate with the world, understand themselves. I think these are all common values we share as humans. Before the Olympic Games, I kind of didn't really know who I am, who I was. I would say I learned a lot from my first job in UBS.
Yeah.
But I think it was not really something that is truly me.
I can see where you're coming from. Yeah. And so, did you go out there as like a games maker?
Mostly
like
a games time volunteer.
Yeah.
But I was involved for a long time, so I was involved in different things. I worked with a school classmate of mine called Deng Yaping, who was one of the most famous ping pong players in China. And there were over 80,000 games time volunteers and over 1 million city volunteers in the game. And I think the spirit of volunteerism was also something that I experienced in the Olympic Games. And I think to some extent, education is a way to give. I was fortunate to have had a scholarship to go to the UK from kind of a businessman, rich businessman in Hong Kong. And when I got to university, I was in Trinity College, Cambridge, and I actually received a full scholarship from Trinity. And I told him the good news, and he actually said, if you don't mind, I want to still pay for more than half of your tuition, and you can, give the other less than half to Cambridge, because I want you to be my scholar. And I asked him, how I pay you back, and why. And he didn't say anything. And at his 50th birthday, he took a few scholars of his to watch a film called Pay It Forward. Yeah. And I think this value also inspired me to set up our education startups. I think the idea of education, as I was saying, was giving, was paying it forward.
And so now you have millions of users. And so will you become the billionaire that has the same scholarship
we actually contributed to his scholarship because he still keeps sending students to the UK and I think to the US as well now. I now, with a few scholars, set up a separate award called Pay It Forward.
That's so cool.
For one of the students every year.
Yeah.
And I'm also giving money to Cambridge, to my schools, because I think they are also paying it forward by educating more students. What a cool story.
So it really went full circle.
Exactly. And I think that's the most beautiful feeling. To be able to help other people achieve things that they couldn't achieve without your help. And
just that first
also,
step.
It was a very personal experience for me. I think if I had to choose one word that was most important for me in the English language, I would choose education because it really changed my destiny.
That's amazing.
I think, I'd love to give more people this opportunity to be able to go through similar experiences of what I went through and change their destinies as well.
So one question I have is, what do you think are the best and the worst parts of Western and Asian education?
That's an interesting question. I think there are good and bad parts of any education system. And I think very much it is a reflection of the societal values. Mm-hmm. I'm more familiar probably with the Chinese education because I'm a practitioner, so I'll start there. I think that the good part of the Chinese education, first of all, is that it is very result-oriented. I think learning can be very fun, but it's also somewhat serious. And it's not only serious, it's a lifelong process. You have to just keep learning and keep growing. And I think to some extent that is a fun part of it. that you keep challenging yourself and you keep raising the bar and achieving things and that you couldn't and going to places that you couldn't. And I think the Chinese education system actually prepares students to face these difficult challenges. Even when they were very young, they were given difficult math problems, for example, and you're rewarded if you do well and solve these really difficult questions. And I think as a result, we have a lot of grit and perseverance, and we still work very hard.
Yeah, that's very true.
When we grow up, I think that's a good part of it, but also it is a bad part of it as well. I think because the Chinese education system is very competitive, there are just too many students but not enough spots, especially in the good universities. It becomes too competitive, and I think there's two things, two main things. One is that the students tend to become selfish. They don't work with each other enough, and they try to compete with each other. And that reflects in the society as well. And the second thing is we focus too much on high-stake exams. And when I do a startup, for example, I'm fundraising, I wouldn't be given a written exam.
And how to go about it.
Yeah, wouldn't be my company's valuation or the amount of fund I raise wouldn't be based on the score. And when I hire people, I don't give them a written exam, at least not solely based on written exams. Especially when you're in the workplace, actually what you do, whatever job you do, is actually quite far away from a written exam, especially with standardized answers. I think those are really things that we could improve on. And I think the Chinese government is realizing this problem, and we have introduced this six new core competencies: learning how to learn, learning how to live healthy, having a vast liberal arts background, and having a respect for scientific thinking, being socially responsible, and being innovative practically. I think these are great signposts and great future objectives.
And is that now part of the sort of broader curriculum?
That is kind of the guideline for the national curriculum. So all the so-called education reform in China should go through this direction, includes teaching, includes learning, includes assessment. And it will start with some cities like Shanghai, Beijing, but gradually will spread across the country. And I think technology could also help with this process because take homework, for example. Before, the teachers could only assess written homework. Because if the homework were to be, for example, go to a museum and have some experience, they couldn't really submit pictures or videos or write an essay or have an interview. But now they can pretty much do anything with information technology. Maybe just a quick comment on international education. I've been educated in the UK and the US, and I think one really good thing is that it's more of a learner-centric education, so that you have the freedom to become who you want to be, and that's kind of different from the Chinese education, which is more teacher-centric. And I think it is reflected again in your society as well, that even for choosing the heads of state, it is a kind of a learner-centric approach where you can choose like from the very bottom.
In theory.
Yes. But I think definitely in education, especially, definitely in the schools I went to, I felt that I had a lot of freedom to do what I did. And my background, my concentration major was in information engineering, but I chose courses like psychology, philosophy, music, business, entrepreneurship.
That you could supplement and do
Absolutely.
Alongside. Yeah,
and I think all of those helped. Like Steve Jobs said, connecting the dots. Now that I'm doing something real, I think those things, the liberal arts background as a core competence you were saying, really helped. And I think maybe one thing that the Western education could improve on is the things the Chinese education was good at, which was giving the students more serious challenges and guiding the students with deliberate practice. Because I think it's not good to have high-stake exams, but there's nothing wrong with having assessments. And I don't think there's anything wrong with the deliberate practice, improving on the areas that you're weak at. And part of the beauty or the reward of education or learning is, being able to do things that you couldn't do.
Yeah, that you didn't think you could do either.
Yeah, and I think my personal experience, at least, was that in especially academic subjects, sometimes I was not guided enough, and it was just too much freedom, and I guess it was partly because it was not as competitive, but also I think somehow some students would lose interest because they didn't know where they were going. And if you lose interest, then it's the most difficult problem. Then if you stop growing, others are growing, the world is still growing. I think that's kind of
and you can never get that time back, can you? So,
exactly. Yeah, it's a time. It's a one-way street, I think. Yeah.
So you're obviously very close to the Chinese edtech scene, I would have thought. So are there any other sort of companies or individuals or initiatives that you'd like to give a shout out to on the podcast in terms of exciting things that are happening in China around edtech as well?
Well, I already mentioned my friend and my mentor's scholarship called William Louis Foundation. I think one other project was it's not an edtech project per se. It was called Teach for China. I think it's very much similar to Teach First.
I think I saw some people were here.
Some were here. And it was similar to Teach for America as well.
Yeah.
And so they recruit the best and brightest graduates from universities, but to have them go through a 2-year program in the rural area of China to be a teacher. And actually, I think you can learn a lot being a teacher, especially in a rural village, interacting with students who most likely are not from the similar social-economic background as you.
Yeah.
I think that was a great project, and especially for someone who might be interested in exploring Oriental culture from the West. I think that's great. And we're working with them for some charity projects as well. We're supplying those schools with information technology, giving the students more readers, but digitally. So that they can listen to stories before they go to bed, for example. We have a teacher-parent communication platform because lots of parents for those schools, they were not in the town. They were outside making money. So now with information technology, they could get informed how their kids are doing. And also they can communicate with their kids and practice with them together maybe. In terms of EdTech initiatives, honestly speaking, I think for K-12, without being too modest, I think we're the most exciting
well, I was going to say, so one of my questions was about, China's really the hot ticket in EdTech now. And it'd be really interesting to know from your perspective. So you obviously mentioned that, I think it was 2008, like whether your experience of international companies and people talking to Chinese ventures or educators, whether that's got the balance in that conversation has changed, because I'm sure now people are like so interested and they know absolutely that so much innovation is coming from there.
Definitely. I mean, this is the third time I've come to this conference, and I think the first time, I was on a China panel every time, and the first time I think there were maybe about 10 people in the panel.
Really?
This time there are 3 China panels in this conference, and every time it was packed. On the one hand, there was definitely more and more interest in China. On the other hand, when I went to this conference 3 years ago, I think I was among maybe 5, including entrepreneurs, investors, and media, to have been here. Now we come in a group of like 50.
Yeah.
So I think there's definitely more and more interest on both sides. China is the biggest education industry in the world. Because it's very competitive. Chinese parents, spend something like 30% of their family income on education-related services and content and school fees. And I think in terms of learning philosophy, as I was saying earlier, I think we can also learn from each other. So I definitely see China taking a leading role in that tech space. We are also thinking of expanding globally.
That's what I was going to ask. It's brilliant because you're teeing up all my questions.
Thank you.
Which was, is that what's next? So you're looking to expand internationally as well?
Yeah. So, on the one hand, as I said, we have 40 million out of 600 million, which means we can still expand quite a lot in China. But we already have a few users in Asia, outside China. I guess they must be Chinese who live there. But I think it's very similar problem that we're facing, as I was saying. I guess maybe it's slightly different between developed countries and developing countries. So our strategy, at least for the next 3 years, may be exporting mainly to developing countries like India, maybe Vietnam, Indonesia, Thailand, the Middle East, Africa, South America. but doing more importing from developed countries like US and UK. We already have some international partners like Kaplan, for example, Cambridge. We have Moonkang from South Korea, who supplies with picture books. We have some technology partner globally as well.
And so for other people listening in as well, who might be potential partners on the content side, are you looking for additional content that's probably tracked to those countries, their curriculums as well?
Absolutely. Yes. So as I was saying, the Chinese education was kind of too narrow. So, the homework content we made ourselves, and we're only good at those content that is synchronized with the Chinese curriculum, and only in those subjects, Chinese, math, English, physics, chemistry, etc. But there's so many more things to learn. For example, I talked to a coding company here in the conference. I talked to a STEAM-based education company here, talked to a company that teaches empathy. And also, I think something that we are really passionate about is education for students who need special assistance as well. And those content we can't really make ourselves. And apart from these so-called serious learning, actually there's more casual learning as well. Like, for example, students may want to learn how to cook or how to do a stand-up comedy show. Or I don't know, how maybe they are just curious about the royal family in the UK. And want to know why the Queen considers the corgi as a family member. So
it's a good question.
I mean, I think those kind of questions are actually great because it is cultural. It's cross-cultural.
So it's almost like prep as well for if you've got students that are going to go and
abroad.
Abroad.
Yes, absolutely. And it can come both in forms of content or in forms of real people talking to each other. So apart from offering additional content outside homework, we are now also introducing live broadcasting, so-called tutoring, but just communication. Like, we have some cross-border communication as well, currently mainly with US tutors, communicating with Chinese kids in English, and teaching them not just about English, but also about American culture.
And just able to answer all those big questions they may have as well.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think it would be great to have the kids talking to kids.
Yeah.
And, to have maybe the parents talking to parents as well. Yeah.
Oh, I hear that more and more, that kind of connectedness and, peer-to-peer learning through the children. Mm-hmm. How many people do you have in your company now?
About 1,000.
And so why do you look so relaxed?
Well, I think there's a great sign in front of pretty much all schools, which says a school ahead, go slow. And I think it's got a lot of wisdom.
Yeah.
I don't think it can ever be late for education. And some of the greatest educational institutions like Cambridge had over 800 years of history.
Yeah.
I read an inspiring book called The Finite versus Infinite Game. And most of the games were designed as finite games, like sports, chess. Pretty much everything designed by humans was finite games. But there was one game that is kind of infinite, and that is the game of life. And I think it is also the game of learning or growing. And I think doing a startup was kind of similar experience. It's on the one side, as I mentioned, it's external. You have your partners, you have your investors, you have your users, obviously, you have your employees to take care of, and your partners and your team. But very much, on the other hand, it is a conversation with yourself as well. You see through the things you do, your characters being blown up, being exaggerated, and especially so-called bad characters, your weaknesses, and by solving these problems, you're actually fixing your mind and your heart.
Because you're focusing on the right areas and
without a better expression. You're growing and learning yourself, and I think that is also one core learning concept called learning by doing, and doing a startup is part of doing.
Yeah,
and I think essentially the core of education is not really about knowledge either. It is about values, attitudes, your character, realizing your identity, and choosing kind of your role in the society and being able to contribute, and even higher things like love and beauty seeking truth. And
I love this. This is on a par with the Lauri Arvoletto Lightner episode, because he also has a background in philosophy, which is really heartening to hear, because I mean those are the big questions: how you spend your life.
Exactly, and I think I'm just like everyone else. We're all the same. We want to ask these ultimate questions. How who we are and where we want to go. I'm kind of relaxed because you can answer these questions quickly. You just have to be mindful and experience and live. When you can live, and laugh when you can laugh.
Well, that's a very good message. And so, if people want to connect with you or follow what you're up to, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, there's many ways to do it. I think maybe WeChat.
Yeah, I was going to say.
is the most popular communication tool in China.
Yeah.
And, I'd be more than happy to give out my number. Shall I do it now?
If you like to.
Yeah, it's 152-0156-8012, which is also my mobile number in China.
Yeah.
So you can.
You may have to change it in about a week.
Yeah, I'd be very happy to talk to anyone, especially, if you have some interest in education. And I think our name is Homework Together, and it means two things. One is the narrow sense, we help with the teachers and parents to help the students together. But on the broader sense, I think the schools, the families, and the society, they should all work together. And it is our future that we are dealing with, and we shouldn't take it too lightly. Mm-hmm. I think in general there's not enough efforts spent in education or resources, and I think we should really work together to solve this big challenge. And I very look forward to having any conversations with anyone who's interested in doing this. And
can we expect to see Homework Together in the UK soon?
Well, I talked to Namish, and I believe in working with partners when I go to a new geographical region. So, we'll see.
We'll see.
Personally, I definitely hope so.
Yeah. And, okay, how exciting. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Sophie. It was a pleasure.
棒极了. So this episode of the Edtech Podcast is on China and EdTech. So I'm absolutely thrilled to be speaking with Cindy Mai, founder and CEO of VIP Kid. VIP Kid recently became an EdTech unicorn, a company valued at $1 billion or more. Because of this recent turn of events, I was keen to connect with Cindy and get her perspective on what's going on in EdTech in China. So welcome, Cindy, and congratulations.
Yes, thank you, Sophie.
So Cindy, my first question, I've just read your fascinating startup story, from classroom experience to leaving high school to meeting the head of Google China. Can you share some of that with our listeners and help paint the picture of how you got to where you are today?
Oh, absolutely. So I started teaching young kids English when I was 15 years old, and that becomes a passion. And then I've been running my first company in brick-and-mortar children's training business for the past almost 20 years before I started VIP Kid. So the whole experience has been valuable to me in terms of making me a passionate children's English teacher, as well as empowered me of understanding what the pain points of the parents are, as well as the children's when they want to learn English. So then when I started VIP Kid, I thought, well, we should find the best teachers across the globe, and then definitely build the best content over the internet, and then create the most fascinating, engaging learning experiences online. So, that's VIP Kid.
And as I understand it, so part of your experience was, going to a school that was quite remote from, where you were used to, and not having a great time of it. So perhaps the alternative idea of accessing variety of tutoring styles until one fits what you want became apparent.
Absolutely. So just a little bit of my past experience when I did move from a very small town in Hebei to a bigger city in Heilongjiang province called Harbin. So I think that experience made me really understand why children need personalized learning. Because I moved from one province to the other, and then we have a Gaokao system where if you are taught very differently over provinces, it's very hard to connect what you've learned. And then children in Heilongjiang province are very, very hardworking. They did a lot of extra tutoring class during the winter holiday. And then when I started in spring, I'm already half a semester behind. And then the result was, I can't really catch up. And then haven't really mastered anything of what they've learned. And as a student, new student in town, I was totally left behind. And then my math teacher didn't like me. And then I've always been reading science fiction magazines in my math class. And one day we just had a very big conflict, me and my teacher. And then she thought, you can't really do this. And then she kicked me out of the classroom. And then I thought, as a child, you really need personalized learning, because if a child is inspired or empowered by the kind of personalized learning, then she would have made up knowledge that she hasn't learned and then catch up with the rest of the class and then may excel in the other things she does. And then also for the teacher, I think she absolutely wants to help me. But then when you have 60 students to teach, some are talented, gifted students and some that you need an intervention, and then you can't really, you only have 24 hours a day, right? You can't really do much to help everyone. So that experience taught me personally, why personalized learning is so important.
And do you remember what this science fiction was? I'm intrigued.
Oh, I think it's about a Martian story. No, it's just so hard to find a science achievement in the math class. And then, the stories are really a great getaway. And but, funny story is when I went to my MBA program many years later, I found myself doing pretty good in statistics, in financial modeling, and all the other, math-savvy classes. And then I thought, if only I knew that in my middle school, I could have done better.
But that's what's really interesting is that, I think that's the experience that people have at work. So, if you're in a work environment and suddenly you don't know something, people generally go off and quietly work out how to do things and then apply it, the next day. And so, essentially that's kind of what you're saying with the online learning, that you can sort of supplement and fill in the gaps and catch up as well.
Yes, absolutely. Because technology is so amazing that you can always use a lot of tools to make personalized learning possible. For example, when we connect children with all the amazing teachers across the globe, we're able to match the appropriate teacher to a specific student, right? So that way you make the student feel so motivated to learn and then connecting to the teacher, and then very helpful. And also with adaptive learning tools like our item banks or reading system, we're able to assist our students in their learning moments out of the classroom. So there are a lot of things you can do with technology to make personalized learning possible.
So just to go back, you actually left high school to deliver your bricks and mortar tutoring company with your uncle, which I love because, you didn't go through that traditional education system, part 1, part 2, part 3. You launched a really successful business already, and then you went back to school, and then you launched VIP Kids. There's a message there about sort of applying your learning in sort of the real world, isn't there?
That's true. Actually, learning and growing has been my motivation every day. It's my motive. And then just constantly being able to learn new things and apply it and then create something new makes me really happy. And I think as a child, I think you have the whole universe of potentials that you could unleash as you grow up. And then if a child is given a platform where they can just imagine, explore, and be curious about everything. And then, there can be miracles. You never know. The child can be the best person that she can be, and then have the planet at her feet. So, yeah.
So, in your opinion, who's driving the EdTech wave in China? So, do you think that's more on the school infrastructure side or personal learners and their families?
I think absolutely on the school side, the Chinese government is absolutely investing in EdTech and in STEAM education to prepare the students for the future. And therefore, we've seen interest from schools in new technologies. A lot of things are used in classrooms by teachers and stuff. And then I think China government has invested a record of $1.07 billion US in EdTech startups in 2015 alone. So there has been a lot of focus and investment in the field. But then I think the major growth driver, though, for EdTech wave in China, like as VIP Kid, is mostly from families. I think it's the big demand of a high quality education and also a efficient learning system that parents really want to have that is driving the growth. For example, a few factors, I think. One of them has been we have the newborn babies every year has been growing since the past 5 years, I think. Every year there are 17 million new babies born in China now. And then we always have tiger moms and parents just invest a lot of dollars in their children's after-school supplementary education, right? And then if you think about the supply, particularly in the English learning sector for the children, we have so few North American teachers that are teaching in China. They're around 20,000 or so. So compared to the gigantic demand, you never have a sufficient supply. And then if you think about the content that has been taught in tutor supplementary schools, these are always curriculum that has been 20, 50 years old, right? So children don't really enjoy the content. And then finally, if you think about like efficiency and efficacy, people spend a few hours in a brick and mortar classroom and then never get to review or preview any content at home. And then parents spend the whole weekend accompanying children to learn. So online model can be much more effective and efficacious. So all these demands and also lack of supply and also models when teachers are dislocated and content are disconnected and then experiences need to be reimagined, reviewed, has been the whole driver. And the driver behind this is the families, I think.
That's so interesting because, in China, you've got the baby boom and that's kind of funding a lot of the demand for new learning experiences and so on. And then I was speaking to a lady from Japan and she was saying that online learning is in demand there, but for the opposite reason. So they've got a declining birth rate. And obviously some of their towns are therefore, as children leave, are declining themselves. And she said that usually what happens is the local town with a school, the other village will send everyone there and then the other village will close. And they don't want that to happen. So they're using online learning to sort of help keep the education experience in both. Just so many applications of it. But one question I wanted to ask was around the schools part of it. So to what extent do teachers have freedom to choose various edtech within their own schools, or is that sort of prescribed at the school or the state level?
I don't think it's prescribed at a city level or district level. I think schools and teachers has a lot of freedom to choose a product that they like and would fit in their instruction or communication with the students.
And for educators listening in, so I had a friend recently and she was asking me which tutoring company she should look up because she wanted to adjust how she worked. And obviously I mentioned VIP Kid, among others. But for educators listening in, how can they make the most of the online learning boom? And what would your advice be to them about choosing potential tutoring companies to supplement their income?
Oh, absolutely. I think for educators to use their time out of schools to work with online tutoring companies will be an amazing experience. And for anyone that is interested in applying to teach with VIP Kid or just learn more, you're welcome to visit our website at vipkidteachers.com. And I think the way to choose or to find companies to work at would be just to log online and then see the Glassdoor ratings, search on Facebook and then YouTube, because those social medias must have a lot of teachers' feedback. People who's been working there telling you exactly what's been going on, the pros and cons. Then with all these authentic feedbacks, I think teachers will be able to make the best decision for themselves. And then in VIP Kid case, particularly, if you go to YouTube, you'll probably find almost close to 20,000 YouTube videos created by VIP Kid teachers. And many of them has thousands of views and hundreds of feedbacks. So, read through those, you figure out who you'll be working with, your fellow teachers and also the team in both San Mateo and also here in Beijing. And I think teachers all love VIP Kid, and we have such a great community that teachers don't only communicate online. We have meetups in many, many cities in the US and Canada nowadays. There are 50, 60 of them every month. So it'd be really fun to not be able to just teach and make an income, but also to communicate and learn and grow together with fellow teachers.
Yes, I saw that on your Twitter feed actually, and about a meetup, and also looking out for your teachers that were involved in the area where the awful hurricane was recently.
Yes, well, my heart and our team's heart and students' heart are all with our teachers. We are so strongly connected together, and we just want to do our best to make sure teachers feel it, and also will be able to do something to help them going through everything that they've been going through. And the teachers are really amazing. They're still trying to figure out a way to teach the kids because they don't want children to be disappointed during the hard times in the hurricane. And it's just such a small classroom when it's connected by the world of internet. And we're so grateful to be working with all these amazing teachers.
So that brings me on to my next question. So you've had massive success with tapping into US tutors for Chinese learners. Will you seek to do the reverse and help us in the UK and US to connect with amazing Mandarin tutors in China?
Absolutely. So we just launched the Lingo Bus, our online Mandarin tutoring service to 5 to 12-year-olds across the globe, children who want to learn Mandarin in an immersion style with our best teachers. So the VIP Kit has got students from over 32 countries and regions in the world already. And then we see our Mandarin program, Lingo Bus, bringing along altogether students from many more countries. And our first student actually come from Japan, second from India, and also many more of them come from North America because it's mostly where our teachers are. And then teachers are teaching online. They trust the way of learning. They believe in it actually. And then they want their children to learn Mandarin because they think it's the best way, and they trust in the VIP Kid brand. And then in the future, I think, because we're using Common Core-based curriculum today, but our dream in the future would be definitely to build global online cloud school for every children that every child we can help in the world. Our mission is to inspire and empower every child for the future, to teach them love of learning and competency for the future. And then we hope that we can reimagine learning as we continue to develop VIP Kid teacher community content and also technological platforms.
Oh, that's really fascinating. And how will VIP Kids also manage the kind of automation of language learning? So I've got a call coming up in the future with Waverley Labs and their pilot earpiece, which uses certain technology to, in theory, translate automatically what someone's saying to you into your ear. So will that kind of negate the need for learning a language directly, do you think? Or how will you anticipate that kind of development in the market?
What VIP Kid the team is working on is not just to teach the language. We're hoping, our vision is to be the leader of global K-12 education. So our product and service today at VIP Kid Lingo Bus is not just about the language, it's about the content. We're teaching language and arts, reading, we're teaching math and science, social studies. So we're really hoping that we are connecting cultures where we're teaching beyond the language. And then the real opportunity here for online learning platform like VIP Kid is to leverage data and to connect meetings of students and teachers, and then through all these data connection, figure out learning science, and then understand how learning is actually happening between teachers and students, and also among all these other components like content, assessments, and everything else. So what we're trying to do is, we've been working on all these data analytics and, of course, our AI technology to better empower and enable our teachers and students so that in the future we can just make the program even more efficacious and also be more efficient, and then build this online cloud school that we don't only serve the affordable families with one-on-one, but also all the other programs that we can build and significantly reduce the cost, and then making high quality learning affordable to every family on the planet. So we can have translation machines all we want, but this would never replace the connection, the culture, the learning science, and then everything that we've been building around.
Human connection. Yeah, I agree. Okay, final two questions. So there's a well-documented lack of diversity within EdTech funding, leadership and design. As a female-led business which has just smashed the $1 billion mark, what advice could you share on your experiences, good and bad, which may help others who are forging the same path but with a little further to go?
Well, I think my first thinking here would be my focus is always been on an educator first, and then I kind of never think about in terms of whether it's female-led or it's male-led, because sky's the limit, and if you don't limit yourself, you would be able to focus on the most important things like quality of teaching, student learning outcomes, and curriculum. And then that's something that is very important to me. But also with that said, I think my experience have being an English teacher since I was 15 years old really helped me, because as a teacher, I'm very confident in my ability and my team's ability to build the galactic or the best education product. And then I have so much faith in the team. You know, we have a very startup mindset, and also executives, almost half of them are female leaders, but then we wouldn't really dwell on being female leader or male leader. And it's a very authentic discussions going on the team as well. But I think, however, being a woman in education has advantages. I think it's really important to have empathy. I think it's a big word today in business. And then it's important to get people to trust in the brand and then advocate for the brand to be able to have the best team. And then female leaders are naturally empathetic. And then we're able to resonate with our colleagues, with our users or students and parents and our teachers. And I mean, these would really help. I encourage everyone to use this advantage and then build, of course, the best education product ever possible. Because I think with student at the core, because if we're doing edtech, we're doing technology. We're doing technology, but we're doing education essentially. So why we're doing education? We're teachers, parents, edtech practitioners. Everyone is just building the whole new world together for the students. So if we can put them at the core, thinking about them every minute of our lives, and then spending every dollar we have on building the best thing for them, then nothing else matters, right? So.
And do you have any books or resources or people that you'd like to share with our listeners, so who may be interested in China and EdTech and the developments? Are there any things that you would recommend they go and look up or read, or you'd like to share with us?
Oh, right. So I think I love two books. These are not China EdTech specifically, but love them very much. One of them is the Khan Academy book, and then the other is a book from Sheryl Sandberg, the Lean In. So I think one of them just helps me to think big and think further into the future and how we can change the world with EdTech. And then the other book really answered a lot of questions I have about why sky's the limit, and then as a female leader, how you could have handled a lot of things in a business world.
And what's the best way for people to get in contact with VIP Kid or connect if they're listening and they're excited to listen in?
So if you're listening and you're an educator, you'd like to work with us, so please check on VIPKidTeachers.com, and then also our Facebook page as well if you want to get in touch with us about other things.
Okay, fantastic. So we'll add those links in. And Cindy, it was a pleasure to speak to you.
Thank you, Sophie.
So it's the second day of ASU GSV, and I've just come back from this morning's keynote, which was all focused on Chinese EdTech and some of the opportunities there. So I'm especially delighted this morning to welcome Yi Wang, CEO of Liu Shaw. I'm probably going to pronounce that incorrectly.
Very good, Sophie.
To the Edtech Podcast. So the company is described as the first AI English teacher. So can you expand a little bit about that and what you're doing here at ASU GSV?
Sure. Thank you for having me, Sophie. Glad to be here. Yeah, so we are one of the leading language education companies in China. We are a 100% mobile company with over 42 million registered users, making us one of the biggest of its kind. Not only do we focus on mobile language learning, but also we are the first in China. I'm not sure if it's in the world, but we are definitely one of the few companies that entirely focus on building AI teachers instead of doing online tutoring as a lot of the companies do these days.
Yeah, so rather than paying a teacher a bit of extra cash to do additional tutoring work, it's essentially an AI tutor or a sort of cognitive computing? I mean, how would you describe that?
Yes. So let me sort of visualize it for you. Okay. First of all, it's a mobile app, and you basically interact with this quote unquote AI teacher in the app. It's a dynamic program. Okay. It has lots of illustrations, animations, and the entire user experience is dynamic and gamified. You went in, you would be guided through a series of activities or exercises or challenges, however you want to name it. Then the entire path is dynamically adjusted and constructed for each and every individual student. So every student comes in, he or she would start with a so-called the placement test, which itself is actually a dynamic test. And at the end of the test, we will recommend the appropriate starting point for you, and the student will start from there. And as they make progress, their learning path will start to differ.
Yeah.
And we recommend the sequence such that it maximizes his or her learning efficiency, meaning that our engine, the AI teacher's brain, optimize for the fastest progress you can make to reach your goals.
So, for example, if you're an average beginner learner with very basic understanding of English, how long might it take you on the platform to become competent enough to go and have a business meeting, say?
That's a good question. So in order to give you that answer, let me sort of give you some background. Okay?
Yeah.
So there is the classic framework of language proficiency called the Common European Framework of Language, called the CEFR. It basically divides up the language proficiency into 6 levels: A1, A2, B1, B2, and C1,
right,
C2.
yeah.
Okay. And it says it takes about, between 1,000 and 1,200 hours of study to go from, beginner at ground level to near native very fluent level. Okay. In comparison, students in China typically spend between 2,000 and 2,500 hours of study at school from the beginner level all the way after they finish college. But the result of that is 90% of Chinese young adults can't have a meaningful conversation in English. Their reading is very good. Their vocabulary might be good, but just they can't really have a conversation. Okay. Our course, our AI teacher can actually cut down that amount of time down to between 400 and 500 hours. And to back it up, let me give you some real hard data that we've tested with. Okay. Between last April and last June, we did a 400 people test with ETS, who produces the TOEFL and GRE tests. This is how we did it. Okay, we recruited 400 volunteers, and they, agreed to only study English during that 2-month period using the AI teacher, with the AI teacher on their mobile phones. And before and after the 2-month period, we actually commissioned ETS to run tests, specifically the TOEIC bridge test, whose score maps to the CFR very well. Then we looked at their scores before and after the 2-month period. What we found out was that 60% of these volunteers have improved at least one complete level in the CFR framework. And the CFR recommended that at the lower level, which, most of the volunteers were at the A1 or A2 level, typically takes 100 hours of study to go up one level. But for those 60% of the people who did improve at least one level, on average, they only spent 36.5 hours of study.
Wow, that's incredible. And I'm just trying to visualize how the platform looks. Is the sort of AI tutor? Yeah, I'd love to have a look. Is it an avatar? Is it something like Duolingo or Busuu or?
It's slightly different. Okay, as you can see, I'm studying level 3, unit 1.
Can I just say it's really refreshing that such a successful CEO also has a cracked iPhone screen.
Well, yeah,
It's like standard. That's brilliant. I love that.
Okay, thank you.
She didn't get up until 7 o'clock, 30 minutes later than usual. Today, Kathy and her kids left home early.
And I can repeat. Today, Kathy and her kids left home early.
Today, Kathy and her kids left home early.
And so
Today, Kathy and her kids left home.
it tracks the pronunciation and
Yes. It encourages you to speak up.
yeah.
Okay. So it really focuses on, listening and speaking. And we adopted a learning theory put forward by an American scholar called Lance Knowles.
Okay.
His learning theory is called RHR, the recursive hierarchical recognition. Okay. It basically brings years of teaching experience together with the latest development in cognitive science, cognitive neuroscience, and second language acquisition.
Very interesting. Can you repeat that for everyone?
Yeah,
So the name of the...
It's the learning theory is called RHR, recursive hierarchical recognition. Okay, it basically says, the language fluency and automaticity is built upon, a hierarchy of concepts. And you start with a simple one, for example, an iPhone. And I'm like, the boy is holding an iPhone. And then I saw a boy holding an iPhone.
Yeah.
You see, you can construct sentences structures from the simple ones to the more complex ones.
There's a mobile gaming studio in the UK who have developed a mobile game to enhance learning of languages. They're called Wibu, to help learn. I think they've got Spanish, Portuguese and English, back and forth. And their CEO referenced the work of language acquisition theorist Stephen Krashen. I think it's sort of similar idea, like, you start with your basic premise and then you kind of add one on kind of thing.
Yeah. And I don't know if you noticed, there's no translation, no subtitle of any kind. It's very immersive.
Yeah.
You at the lower level, the students primarily do, listening and speaking exercises. That's the most efficient way to actually help you build up anything from, vocabulary, grammar to, automaticity and fluency. Okay. So we don't do translation-based approach like, some other programs do, like Duolingo. They do translation-based approach. We think that's actually, relatively inefficient and outdated learning theory. So we actually, whatever we do, we try to maximize the learner's learning efficiency. We think that's very important.
And did you say you have 46 million users?
42 million registered users.
Wow. So how did you go about acquiring so many users? Is that through partnerships? Is it direct to the learners? Is it through schools?
Good question. Actually, we went straight B2C.
Yeah.
We grew by word of mouth. We didn't actually have marketing team until this past January, like 3 months ago.
And how many people are in your team now?
Right now we have over 400.
Wow.
1 year ago we were only less than 100. We've been growing very rapidly.
Yeah.
So just, to give you a little bit more background about how we grew, we launched in February of 2013.
Okay.
And within the first week, one day we saw our traffic sort of shot up, and we realized, and then later that day we realized we were recommended by Apple on the front page of the App Store as a featured new app in mainland China, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Japan. And
that must have been a happy day.
No, of course, we were thrilled. Then, later that year, we were featured as the selected app of the year for the App Store and became the only App Store essential app in the education category in China. So as a result of that, our app has been pre-installed in all demo iPhones throughout Apple's retail store in China. Wow. And I do want to let you know an anecdote, which is kind of related. Apple's global senior VP of marketing, Phil Schiller, came to visit us in our office last year.
Yeah, I think I may have seen a photo of that on social somewhere, maybe.
Yes, maybe. And the funny thing is that I asked him to try out our app, and specifically our proprietary speech evaluation engine. You read after the sentence and it gives you instant feedback on your pronunciation. I intentionally picked a very simple sentence, and he got it wrong twice. The first time, 83 out of 100, and he got the word ARE in red. This cannot be happening. I'm like, please try a second time. He did it a second time, 85 out of 100. Still, the word ARE was in red. I tried it. I got 92. Every word is in green. Was in green. I'm like, no, this cannot be happening.
So that's interesting. So
let me tell you why.
I'm just wondering if it's dialect, if it's accent.
Exactly. So after, a few seconds of silence in the room.
Massive awkwardness.
I know. It felt a lot longer than that. Then Phil said, aha, I knew why. He said, I'm from Boston. So in my Boston accent, the R actually becomes silent after the vowel, so the R,
Right.
So that moment, I was like, really? Is he just being nice? But then I look it up on Wikipedia and really found that phenomena. I'm like, okay, seems our engine can actually detect very small nuances in pronunciation.
And so how will you tackle that though? Because I met a lady here on the plane, she's Welsh and obviously it's still pronounced English. It's just spoken in a different way.
Yes. So one of my co-founders, Dr. Hui Ling, he was a research scientist on Google's speech team.
Okay.
Before we started this company together. So we built this engine with American accent as the training sort of corpus, speech corpus.
Yeah.
Okay. And over time, we actually accumulated the world's largest speech corpus of Chinese speaking English. So today, our speech assessment engine performs better and more accurately than any other engine in the world, specifically for the task of scoring pronunciation and other speaking aspects of Chinese English learners. Right now, actually, we don't only give you scores on your pronunciation. We can actually evaluate pronunciation, grammar, vocabulary, fluency and coherence, all different dimensions, and actually pinpoint your mistakes.
There was a presentation last night about voice services and how that might be integrated. And I just wondered, what will be coming next for your service, but also whether I'm sure lots of the people listening in will be thinking about, okay, that's amazing. When's the sort of, UK to China version coming that they can get on board with as well? Have you got any plans to flip it and do it the other way around?
Yeah, a lot of our expat friends have asked for that. Yeah, so I would say, so far, our focus has been on English, which is a massive market in China and globally.
Yeah.
We'll probably take our product to the global market first, like later this year, with our general English product, which can help learners across different age groups to improve. Then also the test prep market. We have test preparation products for IELTS and very soon coming up TOEFL and the other tests. We think we can use AI technologies to really help them, get the scores and the abilities that they want to have with much less time.
And one area I could see it quite easily developing into is, if you get your best students that go through it, perhaps they're the kind of top grade students, and you have, a knowledge of who those are, whether they could, you could quite easily then have a data bank of these are the best English speaking students we have, whether that's useful for connecting those people with potential employers. I don't know, just thinking about ways that it could develop and what might be next.
You're absolutely right. One interesting aspect of what we've been doing is actually the social element. Very naturally, our app evolved from just a simple practice tool on mobile into China's most vibrant and active language learners community.
Yeah.
You will see a lot of quote unquote opinion leaders. They've been posting their own content, their own podcast on a variety of topics, related to English. Some of them are they're just huge fan on TV shows and movies. They would just host a podcast on that theme. Some of them on something else, like how to teach your children English. That's exactly, the social element that helped us grow. And in fact, some of the big companies like Ctrip, Hainan Airlines, even, Lear, the US companies, a lot of companies started to adopt our product, even first without us knowing it, to train their employees.
Going off on a bit of a tangent, so you met your partner at a foot massage place.
Yes, it's interesting you mentioned. It's actually not my partner, but a dear friend.
Okay.
So that was in the summer of 2012. I was just introduced to the former chief scientist of Amazon, Mr. Andres Wiegand, And I said, hey, Andres, would you like to, grab dinner sometime? And he said, no, let's go to this foot massage place. I go there every week. They're awesome and it's quiet and we can chat. So we went, and this very young masseuse, this young guy who definitely haven't gone to college from my read, he was talking to us while he was giving the massage to Andres. He said, I really hate my job. I want to learn English and find another job. And Andres was like, no, but you're so good. You're so your skill is so good. Why do you want to change, right? So because that's a very low paying job in China, and it's hard. It's hard work, right? And then we asked him, how do you plan to learn it? What's your plan? He said, I'm gonna buy the book New Concept English Book 1. Have you heard of that book? It actually came from England, and it was very famous, still very famous in China for the last 40 years or something. And he said, I'm gonna read the book, and I will listen to the audio. Okay. So I asked him, what kind of phone do you use? He said, I have a knockoff Android phone. And I asked him, what if there was this app that can sort of push content to you that are, for your level and can help you improve quite efficiently, not only to read, but to actually also help you with your listening and speaking, and so you can find a better job. He said, I need to try it first, but if it actually worked as you described, I'll be willing to pay. I said, what about 3 yuan a day? Sorry, 90 yuan, not 90 RMB, which is pretty much like $12 to $15 a month. He said, no problem, because the money I'll be making, had I got a new job, will pay for itself very quickly. So then, the rest of the day was just chatting with Andres about how big of a market this can potentially be. So that was sort of the aha moment for me to think, okay, there is this one, masseuse right in front of me. But I think I can see many people just like him.
In his position,
Yeah, in his position, across country.
So we need to get more entrepreneurs going to foot massage places to get that aha moment.
That's a good idea, to sort of get a different perspective.
And then, your investors so far includes investors that have invested in Airbnb, Slack, Alibaba and Tencent.
Yes, that's
right?
GGV Capital.
So, one of the questions I always ask people, are there any books, people, resources that have inspired you and that you continue to go back to that you would like to share with other people? So it doesn't have to be necessarily anything specifically to do with what we're talking about today, but more that have kind of shaped you and help sort of guide you when you're making your decisions about where your business is going or where you're going.
Yes. Specifically, I can think of 2 books. The first book is Peter Thiel's 0 to 1.
Okay, yeah.
Even before I read his book, I was following his Stanford course, CS 183, the course. And basically that book was just a richer version of his course notes. In one of his lectures, he said something like this. I'm paraphrasing, okay? A startup idea is really some kind of a secret. It basically, it's some very few people's introverted thinking and the beliefs. It cannot be some actually proven, but if you believe in this, you just make it happen.
Yeah.
So that's my interpretation of that. But the second book is just, Ben Horowitz, The Hard Things About Hard Things.
Okay.
The Hard Thing About Hard Things. Yeah. So that book basically taught me that whatever challenge you face today, it's normal. Even the greatest founders and the CEOs, they faced probably more challenges and more challenging ones than what you are facing today.
I don't know if you saw Michael Moe's presentation last night. It was on exactly this. So it's sort of Abraham Lincoln's pretty much got turned down at every sort of political hurdle that he had, and then
I know, just by reading the first 4 chapters of that book, I'm like, no, there's no way that you can make it, right? At every turn of the story. But he made it. He made it big, right? So throughout his book, whenever he faces uncertainty and challenges, he has a tendency to really ask the fundamental questions and, make the quote unquote right decision instead of the obvious or the easy ones. That's what we've been doing. And that's what I've been telling my team.
It's two good recommendations. And then personally, how do you relax? What kind of ticks your boxes, and what kind of person do you think you are in terms of how you relax and what you enjoy personally?
My two co-founders, I just went to the ball game last night, the last game between the Warriors and Jazz. So that was fun. That was a good relax. And, in my spare time, I like to spend time with my two young boys.
Yeah. Oh, very nice.
They're 6 and 4. I like to, go play with them in the parks. And, I do like to hike. And, I play badminton.
If people want to connect with you or find out more, how can they best go about doing that as well?
Yes, actually, they can check out our website. It's www.liulishuo.com, or they can just email me at yi@liulishuo.com.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time today.
Yes, thank you for your time. Thank you for having me, Sophie. It's great talking to you. And always, folks, you can also LinkedIn with me.
Okay,
Yes,
that's
I'm just YI, last name WANT.
And we'll put that in the show notes as well.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
真棒，棒极了。
So it's fantastic to have Sophie Chen, partner with JMD EDU, on the line. So Sophie, first of all, what are the top things international companies should consider when expanding into China?
Okay, so we're seeing more and more international companies are more and more interested to coming to the China market, as the market size and opportunities is very promising and huge. Here are the few things I think international companies should consider before they decide to enter. So first is they need to find the new market product fit in the China market, because we're seeing a lot of companies coming to China and hope that their product will work as they are in UK or in US. But there's a lot of localization should be done when they're entering into the China market. This is the first thing. And the second is to find the right partners and get into the ecosystem and community to really understand the China market. And also, I believe patience is also very important, because the market is different and the environment is different. So it needs time to understand and needs time to fit in.
And do you see a lot of international education institutions, so whether that's schools or universities, coming to China as well?
Yes. There are a few, especially like international schools, international private schools. We have some UK brands that's entering into the China market.
And do you think the localization is just as important for those guys as well?
Yes, because first for the schools, they have also, I would say, government regulations or even more strict government regulations on how to build a full-time school in China. So the curriculum or the teachers could be more original, but how do you deal with the government? How do you recruit Chinese students? And how to put the Chinese curriculum that the government needs to be in the full-time school in China? These are all the things that you have to be localizing.
Brilliant. What are the biggest questions Chinese companies have about coming to the UK?
Yeah, so of course, if they're entering into the UK markets, the big question is like the go-to-market strategy in UK, like how the school system work in UK, how do they sell into the UK school system, and where are the channels, or if their customer product, what are the learning behaviors and what are the learning demands that are in the UK market.
And are you finding a lot of interest from Chinese companies that want to come to UK, or is it seen as quite a small market versus obviously the potential even domestically with China?
So Chinese companies do give more attention on the Chinese market itself because it's the market that they know. But we also notice some companies are more ambitious of the international market. So UK would be an entry point for them, especially the technology side of if the product is more technology and a tool, meaning that they are more universal, not like education content. They're like online course platform or like a learning tool. They would be thinking of the like international market.
Thanks very much for the time as well.
Okay, thank you so much.
I'm delighted to welcome Peiyu, head of the EdStars program at Tao Education. So welcome.
Hi, Sophie. Thank you.
And so first off, so what is the EdStars program?
So EdStars was funded in 2004. So it's basically powered by two of the leader enterprises in China. One is Tao Education Group, and the other one is Tencent. The mission of the program is to find out who is in the market and who is doing great in the education entrepreneurship field, and then empower them with training and other resources to help them grow. So it's a learning network for education enterprises in China.
That's amazing. And if I understand correctly, so VIP Kid is the first female-led EdTech enterprise, and that's from China. That was announced at the end of last week.
Yeah, so Cindy was also in our program as well.
What types of companies do you also have on the program?
We actually have a lot of them right now because we started in 2004 and so far it's been 3 years. And then we basically recruit companies batch by batch. So it's our 5th batch right now. And then every class we have 36 companies in the program. So right now we actually already had 180 companies joining the EdStars program. And then this year we also launched a special program for artistics, sports, and those programs. So we're actually starting a new batch for them, and that class is going to be 50. So altogether, we have 230 companies already in the network.
And up to this point, have those companies been more focused on, for example, K-12 or preparatory stuff, so doing testing or online learning or gaming? Has there been a particular focus or a variety?
Actually, not necessarily. It's a good variety of group. We're actually trying to build a variety of programs within so that people can learn from each other's very different experiences as well.
And you mentioned doing the cohort of 50 companies that are sort of almost extracurricular, so swimming and STEAM and so on. Are you finding that there's a bigger appetite for that kind of learning in China going forward? Or I'm just interested, why now?
Sure, we're definitely finding a trend of interest in that field. And then actually our mother company, so TAL Education Group, has made some big investment in some of the leading companies in the extracurriculum programs as well. So we definitely think very positive of it.
And for those companies that join the EdStars program, obviously there's a huge incentive because you get the expertise and backing of TAL Education and Tencent, who I think also have an education prize, don't they? The Yidan prize.
Yeah.
Why are they joining EdStars? Is it to expand internationally, or what else do they look to the program to provide?
Yeah, very good question. So that actually goes back to why we started the program. So the program was started 3 years ago, and then it was just a very spontaneous thing. So it was a lot of companies coming to us and started asking questions about, so you guys have worked in the market for many years, and then we would love to speak to you guys, and then maybe we can, find learning in each other. So at that time we thought, if so many people have that needs, why don't we just, organize a group so that we can chat with everyone together to increase the efficiency. But then later on, we realized that it's actually, it's one thing that we found it's meaningful when we are supporting other players within the field and then getting the industry going together. It's actually also beneficial for us as well. That's first. And also, I think that for us, we are a 14 years old company already. And then talking with those startups in the field that has, like new ideas, new models, is also really inspiring for us as well. So then we started, the program officially as almost like a study school for entrepreneurs in education field in China. And then we also talked with a lot of people who decided to join the program around, why they decided to be part of it. I think that there are mainly a couple of reasons. So first of all, obviously, people are really eager to learn from what other people have been doing. What's the secret for other really successful education companies. Like Cindy is actually one of our tutors as well. Also as other very successful entrepreneurs within the field as well. Also, people are eager to learn what's happening outside of education. So for example, we had former CEO of Alibaba, Mr. David Wei. He's one of our longtime tutor as well. And also we had the founder of Baidu, Mr. Lei Ming, who is actually also a real expert in artificial intelligence in China as well. So they come in with expertise from other industries, from investments, from tech, from other really different industries as well, but coming with inspiring ideas for education leaders as well. So I think learning is definitely a big part of it. Also, the other thing is, since it's growing, it's becoming a sort of big network right now. So joining the network really means that you get real collaborations and then communications with other SStars network companies as well. So a lot of collaboration just naturally happened after they joined SStars.
So amazing tutors and mentors you have on the program. I can hear the questions that our listeners will be asking, which is, do you also take international edtech companies onto the program, or is it purely for Chinese companies?
Actually, this year we have a couple of international companies in the program as well. So for example, for the actual curriculum program, Wonder Workshop is going to be one of the classmates within that batch. We also had ABC Mouse for our 5th batch as well. The only challenging part is that because all the curriculums that we have within the program is actually in Chinese. So it's still a real challenge for international entrepreneurs to be part of it. But if you have a office in China and then having like a China CEO, we totally welcome you to look into the program and then explore opportunities to be part of it.
That's very cool. And if people want to find out more, what's the best way for them to go about that?
Sure. If people have WeChat, that would be great. So we actually have a WeChat account. So if you search @stars, EDSTARS, you will be able to find us.
Lovely. Well, thank you so much. That's really, really fascinating. I've learned a lot as well.
Thank you so much.
That brings us to the end of this 4th episode from the 10-part ASU GSV Summit Series. Don't forget to sign up to our newsletter to find out about our upcoming meetup drinks, cool jobs currently circulating, and other announcements. For full references, show notes, and book recommendations, go to the&edtechpodcast.com. And for competitions and more, go to our Facebook page, www.facebook.com/podcastedtech. If you like what you hear, why not drop us a loving review on iTunes? And come back next week for our following episode on educational reform. Have a great week.